Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller, along with Robert Glasscock, we love bringing you these episodes, and thank you so much for listening to them. We just got some really good numbers reports of a lot of you are enjoying this series. So from Robert and I both, just thank you. All right, Robert, we talked about Horary Astrology in our last episode, and I wanted to continue that with something that I would love your thoughts on. If you think about the Horary Axis, so in the type of horary that you teach that is mostly a derivative of Mark Edmund Jones' book on horary, out of print, but available to find. When you catch one, grab it. There are 6 axes, basically, that we deal with in looking at various questions. And of course, this is just following the houses around the chart. So there's Aries and Libra. So that's ruled by Mars and Venus. Y'all are going to have to put your thinking caps on here. Just think about the chart. Aries and Libra, that's the first house axis. Mars and Venus are the rulers there. Then Taurus and Scorpio. Again, Mars, because in Horary Astrology, remember, these were the original planets before even the telescope. So Mars and Venus again on that axis. Then we move to Gemini and Sagittarius, where we have Mercury as the ruler of Gemini and Jupiter as the ancient or original ruler of Sagittarius. Then we move to Virgo and Pisces, which is Mercury ruling Virgo and Jupiter ruling Pisces. Then we have Cancer and Capricorn, which is the moon and Saturn. Thank goodness we have something that moves around quickly, so we scramble it up every 2 days. And then we have Leo and Aquarius, which is the Sun and Saturn. And now we're back around because the next sign, obviously, is a repeat of what we've already done. So when I wrote this down, my thought was, what in the world is going on here? Because it makes it interesting because horary uses really 4 of the 6 combinations are the same answer. They're the same planetary combination. Look at what we said. Aries and Libra, Mars and Venus. Taurus and Scorpio, Mars and Venus. Gemini and Sagittarius, Mercury and Jupiter. Virgo and Pisces, Mercury and Jupiter. Well, your chances, there are only 2 more left. So your chances of landing on one of those doubles are high if you were rolling dice here. So how does that factor into how horary answers really come to us, do you think?
Well, first of all, you're right. In Horary Astrology, again, it has very specific rules. You only use the old Chaldean planetary rulerships. So in the days before telescopes, we only knew out to Saturn. That's as far as we could see. As it turns out, Uranus is visible to the naked eye if you know where to look. It's so tiny, but it actually is. But in any case, the ancient astrologers only used the Chaldean rulerships. So Scorpio in that situation in Horary is always ruled by Mars. Pisces is always ruled by Jupiter because that's the Chaldean ruler before we knew about Neptune. So Jupiter has always been associated with Pisces. What was the other one? Oh, and Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. The old Chaldean ruler of both Capricorn and Aquarius was Saturn. So in ancient astrology, you only had the 5 planets, really. And so it's interesting that astrology in Horary, for example, only presupposes that there are certain planets. You just named it, Venus, Mars. They are always associated with Libra and Aries and Scorpio and Taurus. And the same goes for Pisces and Sagittarius, both ruled by Jupiter. The same goes for Aquarius and Capricorn, both ruled by Saturn. So it's interesting. What you point out statistically is you've only got these certain polarities in Horary astrology that are countable, that are usable. You don't use all the aspects in Horary astrology. You only use the 5 original Ptolemaic aspects: the conjunction, the sextile, the square, the trine, and the opposition. You don't use other aspects. Now, in Horary, there are situations where you can move from the ancient rulers, the Chaldean rulers, to the contemporary rulers, so that there are situations and questions in Horary where it is permissible. In fact, it's recommended that you then move on to the collective or the contemporary rulers for Scorpio, Aquarius, and Pisces. But to do that in Horary, you have to be able to identify a greater, larger collective element in the question in order to move over to look and see if maybe the contemporary ruler of Scorpio or Aquarius or Pisces makes an aspect with Mercury or Mars or Venus or something. But to do that, as I say, that's a special case. And then to move in, and the same is true in Horary, you can, if the question demands it, you can then move into more arcane aspects like inconjuncts or quincunxes, which are 150 degrees and so on. So there are situations in astrology that permit you to move into contemporary planets and also additional aspects. But in Horary, no planet is ever allowed to leave the sign that it is in to form an aspect. See, so there's certain rules in Horary that don't apply to natal astrology. But it is interesting because there are, you think about it, Mars and Venus are absolutely paired up in astrology, as well as in what you just pointed out. Gee, there are only so many axes here. Well, you're right. There's Aries and Libra, that's one axis, Mars and Venus. Well, Mars and Venus are also for Taurus and Scorpio. So that takes care of the Mars-Venus. Then the next sign is Gemini, and the opposite sign, which is Sagittarius, Mercury and Jupiter, as you pointed out. The same thing is true with Pisces and Virgo opposite. The reason that these opposite signs are so important is because in Horary astrology, the two planets, what you have to first locate the house that rules the question, and that's only in Horary again. And you have to know what you're doing with house rulerships to be able to really truly identify the house that actually rules the question. And sometimes it can be confusing. For example, in the question, I'm looking for a new car. Should I buy this car or lease this car? All right, those are two separate questions in Horary, and you have to identify the first one. And the client phrases it. You take them in that order. So the client, let's say, should I buy this car? All right, that's option number one. Well, think about it. Is the question about a car? No, it's about the money. Should I buy or lease? Which is better for me financially? That's what that question's about. So if you misidentify the question and you think it's about the car and you put that question in the third house, you're going to be wrong. The question is not about the car. It's about the money. Should I buy or lease the car? That's a second house question. Which one of these options is best for me financially? So that's the Horary question. It's located correctly in the second house. And then that's the buy option because they mentioned it first. The second option was or lease it. Well, the second option, this is what we call a serial question in Horary. It's a series of questions related to the same theme. So the first option was buy a car. That's the second house, and the eighth opposite. The eighth house, the opposite house from the question the house that rules the question. The opposite house shows you the environment's response to this question. The environment, meaning everybody and everything outside of the querent that is related to this question. So that's why you look to see whether the rulers of the question and the ruler of its opposite house of the immediate outcome, that's what the opposite house shows, whether they're in a favorable aspect, a conjunction, a sextile, a trine, or if they're in an unfavorable aspect, and these are very cut and dried in Horary. Unfavorable aspects are only the square and opposition. So that's where you instantly can see the environment's response to that option or that question. And in that case, you would look to the second house for the buy option, and you'd look to the rulers of the second and the eighth and see if they form a favorable or unfavorable aspect or no aspect. Then you would look to the third from the second, which is like a relative question, a sibling question to the first one. So in that case, If the second house of finances is rules the buy option, then the third house from the second, namely the fourth house, would rule the lease option. And then you again just compare the aspects between the rulers of those two houses and their opposite houses and see. And if one of those forms a favorable aspect, that's the one to choose. So that's how it works, but it's the concept is what's important here. Once you've identified the house that rules the question, then you know what planet, based on the sign on that cusp, you know what planet rules that option. Then you look to the opposite house to get the immediate outcome.
Okay, you've been doing this for a long time, and you've seen a lot of horary charts, and you've studied it probably as well as anybody that at least has a platform of modern day astrology. Here's what I wanted to throw into the mix here. Sometimes when you look at a horary chart, the planets are evenly and equally or beautifully distributed all around the chart in various ways. You might have 2 or sometimes 3, maybe a stellium in one sign, but basically they're scattered around the chart in various ways. And then one that we have coming up next spring, we're going to have several months where it's going to be super stellium season, because we're going to have a big stellium in Aquarius, then a big stellium in Pisces, then a big stellium in Aries, and then a big stellium in Taurus. So in other words, using this mathematical roll the dice, what are your odds, 4 out of 6 to get the same thing, it's like next spring is going to be conjunction season. So it's like, yes. That's the chart. Well, if whether you're asking the chart or not, it's almost like that yes is kind of built into the air, is it not?
It is. And you're very observant, because when you have seasons of years where you have clumps of planets like we're experiencing now, look at what's happening in the world. The entire world is more and more and more polarized in this era than it's ever been, frankly, since the last World War, because of the lopsidedness of the arrangements of the planets. So everybody around the world is coming down very decisively on one side or the other of, for example, democracy versus authoritarianism. That's the big one that's going on now.
Now,
So
would you explain the lopsidedness, especially especially in the horary context?
Well, let's either way in an horary if we're living during a time where the planets are forming stelliums, let's say they're all concentrated in one sector of the zodiac.
We're going to have it next spring.
As they are. So what you have then is a lopsided situation, and that perfectly reflects the kind of polarization that every nation is experiencing this. The old order, the old ways of doing things, the old authorities, all of them are dying and simultaneously being reborn as something else. And that's what we're here to try and define for ourselves, is what is the new thing.
Then it seems like what you'd really, if you were having an attunement to horary, right? Like, let's say that was something you just wanted to have a feeling for, like, what's going on. You would want to know where Mars and Venus are related to each other. And you'd want to know where Mercury and Jupiter are related to each other. And the Sun and Saturn, you can kind of follow along because it's just one aspect easier. And then the Moon and Saturn, that's going to hop around every 2 days. But really, if you were in tune with Mars and Venus and Mercury and Jupiter at any given time, then you would have the 4 out of 6 possibility of knowing what that horary answer was based on what house the question lands in. Like, you could be in tune with this.
Well, I love your saying in tune with the planets, because I think as you work with astrology, study it, practice it, whatever you do with it, it can't help but expand your awareness. It really does. Because you're now suddenly considering, let's say, your natal chart or an horary question in light of what astrology says. So the exercise itself forces you to expand and think about things that you might not have considered at all otherwise. And over time, you get to a point where you even viscerally, instinctively are aware You may not know exactly what it is you're aware of until you look at an ephemeris, but you do become aware of planetary cycles. And you think, oh, gee, I'm in a cycle right now with Mars is in Gemini, and look at what it's doing. It's opposing my Uranus and squares my Mercury and Jupiter. Boom, that's all you need. If you're an astrologer, that's now in the back of your head. And you know how long that's going to last. It's a Mars aspect. Mars is direct now, so it's not going to last that long. But Mars has been in this sign of Gemini for like 7 months or something now. So that's unusual for Mars because it went retrograde in Gemini, went all the way back through it, and then turned direct at the beginning of Gen, starts back through Gemini, where it is now, in about the middle. So you do get attuned to these cycles. And certainly you can be attuned to the major planet cycles. You know that transiting Saturn is about to leave Aquarius and go into Pisces, for example, for 2.5 years. So you know those cycles, and you really do, I think, as a student of astrology or as an astrologer, you really do get attuned just in the back of your mind, subconsciously. You know, gee, Saturn's going to be in Pisces for 2.5 years. That's in this house in my chart. That's aspecting these planets in my chart. Boom, that's it. You've got the shorthand for it, and it's tucked in the back of your mind. And so it stays there, and it begins to bubble up into consciousness. You'll see something or hear something or experience something one day. That's right. That's the Saturn ingress into Pisces. That's what this is. So it does tune you in that way. I find anyway.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
yeah, that's
talking
the general thread, is like you could always kind of be in tune with what some of these horary configurations would be, so that you would just know. I mean, like right now, Mars and Venus are sextile each other, and you could go with that. All right, Robert, thank you so much. This is where we love horary astrology. Oh my gosh, and you have ever been a salesman for me and got me convinced with it, and I love working with it now as well. If you'd like to talk to Robert, you know he can answer horary questions during readings too. Yes, absolutely. You can check out the show notes for the direct link and all the other great stuff that we have going on here in the podcast, including our book club. I want to keep mentioning this because we're just getting it off the ground now. Not too late to jump in. All the details are on the website, funastrologybookclub.com, which is also in the notes. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time on Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Robert Glasscock.